The hallway echoed with laughter. Not the kind that warms your heart, the kind that cuts deep. Ethan Lee clutched his lunchbox tighter as he walked past the lockers, his small steps echoing on the polished floor. He had learned to keep his head down, to walk faster, to pretend the words didn't sting. But today, they came louder. "Hey, terrorist!" One boy shouted, throwing a crumpled paper ball that hit Ethan's shoulder. Another snickered, "You making bombs in science class again?" The crowd erupted, the sound of sneakers squeaking, laughter bouncing off metal doors, and not a single teacher in sight. Ethan froze. His throat tightened, his hands trembling, but his eyes, they didn't fill with tears this time. Something inside him hardened. He stared at the bullies, calm, quiet, almost too calm, and whispered under his breath, "One day, you'll remember this." The laughter carried on, but the moment burned itself into his memory, like a scar no one could see. 20 years later, in a tall glass building overlooking downtown Chicago, a group of employees waited nervously inside a boardroom. The door opened, and the man who stepped in wore the same eyes, older now, sharper, colder. The laughter had long died, but the silence that followed was even louder. In a quiet suburban school, a young Asian American boy becomes the target of cruel bullying. One hateful word changes his life forever, planting the seed of a promise he'll carry for 20 years. But even in silence, Ethan learns that dignity can speak louder than hate. The cafeteria smelled of pizza and cleaning spray, that strange mix that every middle school seemed to share. The noise was deafening. Laughter, trays clattering, sneakers squeaking on the linoleum floor. At the far end of the room sat Ethan Lee, 12 years old, small for his age. His black hair trimmed neatly, his eyes fixed on his lunch. He wasn't trying to be invisible. It just happened naturally. He pulled a small Tupperware box from his backpack, filled with rice and leftover curry his mom had packed that morning. The smell of spices drifted through the air, and before he could even take a bite, a voice cut through the noise. "Ooh, what is that smell?" Ethan looked up. 3 boys were walking toward him. Brandon, the tall one with a baseball cap turned backward, Kyle, the loudmouth, and Trent, who laughed at everything Brandon said. "Yo, terrorist boy's got bombs in his lunch," Kyle shouted. The laughter that followed was sharp, echoing through the cafeteria like glass breaking. A few kids at nearby tables laughed too, not because they thought it was funny, but because it was easier than saying nothing. Ethan froze. He wanted to disappear, but instead he reached for his fork, trying to ignore them. "Hey, I'm talking to you," Brandon said, shoving his tray aside. "What's your problem, huh? Gonna blow us all up?" A few teachers looked up, then just as quickly looked away. Ethan's hand trembled slightly as he set his fork down. He didn't answer. Brandon leaned closer, his breath hot with soda and arrogance. "You hear me, freak?" That word, freak, hit harder than the shove that came right after it. Ethan's lunchbox hit the floor, curry spilling across his shoes. The cafeteria went quiet. For a moment, only the sound of dripping sauce filled the air. Ethan looked down, then slowly bent to pick up the box. His face didn't change. No tears, no reaction. Just quiet. He felt something shift inside him, a slow, heavy feeling settling in his chest. "You should clean that up," Brandon sneered. "Smells like whatever country you're from." Ethan stood up straight, holding the empty lunchbox. His voice was low, almost calm. "I'm from here." Brandon laughed. "Yeah, right." He turned to his friends, slapping Trent's shoulder. "Sure you are, Bin Laden Jr.?" The laughter roared back to life, but Ethan didn't move. He looked straight at Brandon, not with anger, but with something colder. It was quiet dignity, that look of someone who's been humiliated so many times. He's learned how to stand without shaking. After a moment, he simply walked away. No yelling. No fighting. Just silence. The teacher at the door said nothing. The janitor sighed. The laughter faded. Outside, the wind felt cool against Ethan's face. He walked across the playground, still clutching the empty lunchbox. Somewhere behind him, a bell rang for the next class. He sat on the edge of the field, staring at the horizon, that long stretch of blue sky over the football posts. His thoughts were quiet, but his heart wasn't. One day, he whispered to himself, one day they'll see. He didn't know what that meant yet. He didn't know what he'd become. But that moment, the word terrorist, the spilled curry, the laughter, it carved itself into his memory like a scar. That night, when his mother asked how school went, he just said, "It was fine, Mom." But when she left his room, Ethan sat by the window, staring out at the stars. He didn't cry. He just made a silent promise to never let them define him. The next morning, he went back to school. He sat in the same cafeteria. The same boys laughed again. But something had changed. He didn't flinch this time. He didn't look down. He just watched. And deep inside, he began to build something, not hate, not anger, but resolve. That kind of quiet strength that only comes from pain. The kind that waits years for the right moment to speak. And 20 years later, it finally would. The morning bell shrieked through the corridors, slicing through Aisha's thoughts like a blade. Her fingers gripped the straps of her backpack as if the nylon could hold her together. Students drifted past, laughing, whispering, pretending nothing had happened yesterday, pretending not to know that a single slur had shattered someone's dignity in front of everyone. She pushed the classroom door open. The fluorescent lights flickered, humming with their usual indifference. But the air was heavy, thick with the kind of quiet that comes after a storm. Everyone knew. Everyone had seen. Yet no one wanted to meet her eyes. Aisha walked toward her seat, the sound of her sneakers against the linoleum echoing louder than ever. She sat down, pulled out her notebook, and tried to pretend her world wasn't crumbling. Ms. Parker, the teacher, glanced up from her desk. Her blue eyes softened for a moment, pity maybe, but then she looked away, busying herself with attendance. The kind of silence teachers keep when they know something is wrong but fear the system more than the truth. Aisha looked up at the whiteboard, her breath caught. 3 words were scrawled and messy. Black marker, the same slur, written larger, bolder, uglier. A cruel laughter rippled through the back of the room. Someone muttered, "Guess the truth hurts," just low enough that Miss Parker could pretend not to hear. Aisha's throat burned. Her vision blurred. She wanted to scream, to erase the words, to run. But her hands wouldn't move. The classroom, once her sanctuary, had turned into a courtroom, and everyone was a silent witness. Miss Parker froze when she finally saw it. Her marker dropped, rolling to the floor. For a second, she looked as though she might say something. But then, nothing. She erased the words without a word and turned back to the lesson plan. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was complicity. Aisha felt it, the shame that didn't belong to her, crawling under her skin. Her notebook remained blank. Each tick of the clock was a reminder that justice was asleep here. Then, from the second row, a chair scraped back. All heads turned. It was Liam, the quiet white boy who barely spoke. The one who sat behind her, who always seemed invisible. His face was pale, but his jaw was tight. "Miss Parker," he said, voice shaking but clear. "You're not just gonna erase that, right?" Someone wrote a hate word. "That's not ... nothing." The room froze. Ms. Parker's hand trembled. "Liam, please." "Let's not." "No, we should, Miss Parker." His voice grew louder. "We all saw who did it yesterday. And now it's on the board. Are we really gonna pretend it didn't happen?" A gasp rippled through the room. 2 boys at the back exchanged nervous glances, the same ones who had mocked Aisha before. Aisha stared at Liam, her breath caught between disbelief and relief. No one had spoken for her before. Not here. Not like this. Ms. Parker's expression shifted, part fear, part guilt. "Liam, please sit down," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Liam didn't move. He looked at Aisha, then back at the board. "Silence is still a choice," he said quietly, and with that, he sat. The air cracked with tension. No one laughed now. No one dared. Ms. Parker finally spoke, her tone shaking. "Class dismissed early today," she said, eyes glassy. She grabbed her purse and stepped out, leaving 20 students in stunned quiet. Aisha stared at the board, now blank, but somehow still screaming. Her pulse slowed. She looked at Liam, who was packing his bag. He didn't meet her eyes, but she whispered, "Thank you." He just nodded outside the classroom. The hallway buzzed again, as though nothing had happened. But for Aisha, something had. For the first time since yesterday, she didn't feel entirely alone. Still, she knew, this wasn't over. The slur might have been erased, but the wound remained. And somewhere inside her, something was beginning to rise, not anger, not fear, but a quiet, determined fire. A fire that would not let this end in silence. The intercom crackled just as Aisha zipped up her backpack. "Aisha Williams, please report to the principal's office immediately." The sound felt like a spotlight slicing through her chest. Every head turned toward her, eyes heavy with curiosity and guilt. Even Liam looked up, his brows furrowed. Aisha swallowed hard and stood, her chair scraping the tile. She wanted to disappear. But as she walked toward the door, she could feel the silence following her, the silence that had started to suffocate her ever since that word was spoken. The hallway seemed longer than ever. Lockers gleamed like mirrors of judgment. Every step echoed her heartbeat. "They called me. They called me." When she reached the principal's door, she hesitated. Behind the frosted glass, she could make out two figures, Principal Turner, a tall man with graying hair and a forced smile, and Miss Parker, sitting rigidly with folded arms. "Come in," Turner said when she knocked. Aisha entered quietly. The office smelled like lemon cleaner and old paperwork. A diploma hung behind Turner's desk. Fairness, leadership, integrity, words that already felt like a cruel joke. "Please, sit down, Aisha," Turner said, his voice dripping with practiced calm. "I heard there was a disruption in class today." Aisha sat slowly. "Someone wrote—" Yes, Turner interrupted, waving his hand as if brushing dust off his sleeve. "Miss Parker has informed me. We're very sorry you were offended." Offended. The word landed like a slap. Aisha's eyes stung. "Sir, it wasn't just offensive. It was a hate word. Let's not exaggerate," Turner said sharply. "These boys," he checked a note on his desk, "Tyler and Jake, they come from good families. They said it was a joke taken out of context." Aisha blinked. "A joke?" Ms. Parker shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Turner leaned forward. "Look, Aisha, I understand this must be difficult. But sometimes it's best not to make a scene. You're an honors student. You don't want to damage your record, right?" Her heart sank. "So, nothing's going to happen to them?" Turner smiled thinly. "We'll handle it internally. Trust the system." She stared at him, this man sitting beneath the words integrity and leadership, and for the first time, she saw what the system really looked like, polished, polite, and completely blind. But before she could respond, a knock hit the door again. It swung open. Liam stood there, chest heaving, holding something in his trembling hands, his phone. "Sir," he said, "you might want to see this." Turner frowned. "Liam, this is a private meeting." But Liam stepped closer and set the phone on the desk. He pressed play. The screen lit up, shaky footage taken from the back of the classroom. It showed Tyler leaning forward, whispering something. The laughter. And then Miss Parker's face, frozen in silence. Turner's color drained. Miss Parker gasped. Liam's voice was steady now. "I recorded it, because I knew this would happen. You always say you promote fairness. So here's fairness." The room went dead quiet except for the muffled sound of the video finishing. Turner rubbed his temples, struggling for words. This shouldn't have been recorded without permission. It shouldn't have happened. "Sir," Liam said sharply, for a moment, everything hung in the air. Truth, power, and fear colliding. Finally, Turner sighed, leaning back in his chair. "Leave the video with me," he said quietly. "We'll handle disciplinary action immediately." But Aisha could hear the shift in his tone. No more authority, just resignation. The mask had cracked. "Ms. Parker spoke at last, her voice breaking. Aisha, I'm sorry. I should have said something. I thought if I ignored it, it would stop. But I was wrong. Aisha didn't know whether to cry or scream. You could have protected me, she whispered. You could have erased the word before it hit me like a weapon. Tears welled in Miss Parker's eyes. You're right. Turner cleared his throat. You both may go. Liam, thank you for your honesty. Aisha, we'll call your parents later today, and I'll be speaking with those boys. It was a weak promise, but for the first time, the power had shifted just slightly. As Aisha walked out of the office, the air felt different. Later, maybe. She turned to Liam in the hallway. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. He shrugged. Yeah, I did. Some of us can walk away. You can't. That's not fair. For a long second, she didn't speak. Then she smiled, small, tired, but real. Thank you. As they walked down the hall, the whispers started again, but this time they weren't mocking. They were uncertain, uneasy, filled with the sound of guilt waking up. Aisha didn't know what would happen next, whether justice would be real, or just another illusion. But one thing was clear. Silence had been broken, and once truth breaks through, it never goes quiet again. The next morning, Aisha's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Dozens of notifications blinked across her screen, messages, tags, comments, and missed calls. At first, she thought something terrible had happened. Then she saw it. Video of racist slur at local high school sparks outrage. Watch now. Her heart stopped. Liam's recording, the one from the principal's office, was online. Someone had uploaded it to a local forum, and overnight it had gone viral. She opened it, trembling. There she was, frozen in shock, while Tyler leaned forward and spat out the word. The cruel laughter. The silence from Miss Parker. The raw pain on her face. Underneath the video, the comments flooded in. This is disgusting. Fire that teacher. Why do kids still think this is okay? She handled that with more grace than most adults. Stay strong, Aisha, we see you. Her eyes blurred with tears. People, strangers from across the country, were defending her, standing up for her. But just below those voices came others, darker, sharper. Snowflake generation. Bet she made it up. It's just a word, get over it. The same hate, repackaged through a screen. Aisha locked her phone and sat in silence. The morning sun was filtering through her curtains, but everything felt dim. She wanted peace, not attention. She wanted her normal life back. A knock came on her door. Her mother peeked in, eyes wide, worry etched into her face. Aisha, honey? The school called. They said there's media outside, reporters. Aisha froze. Reporters? Her mother nodded. News vans, cameras. They're saying the district might issue a statement today. Aisha stood, her stomach twisting. I didn't ask for this, she whispered. Downstairs, through the window, she could see them. Microphones, flashing lights, and curious neighbors watching from their lawns. The once quiet street now buzzed like a storm. Her father put a steady hand on her shoulder. You didn't ask for it, but you didn't cause it either. Truth just found a way out. At school, chaos ruled. Students gathered in clusters, whispering, arguing. Some wore t-shirts with Aisha's name on them. Others called her dramatic behind her back. Teachers avoided eye contact. Tyler and Jake were nowhere to be seen. By noon, the principal announced a closed-door meeting to address the situation. In reality, it was a cover-up. Turner sat behind his desk again, but this time his calm mask had cracks. Aisha, we need to control the narrative, he began. The video was private property. You could face consequences for its release. Her jaw dropped. Consequences? For exposing racism? Ms. Parker was there again, quiet, but something had changed in her eyes. She looked tired of pretending. Turner continued. If you just stayed quiet, this wouldn't have gotten out of hand. The district is getting pressure. Sponsors are threatening to pull funding. Aisha cut him off. So this is about money, not people. His silence said it all. Ms. Parker stood abruptly. Sir, with all due respect, she deserves an apology, not a warning. Turner's eyes flared. Miss Parker, that's enough. No, she said, louder this time. I was there. I did nothing. And I've hated myself for it ever since. This isn't just a video. It's what we let happen every day when we stay silent. The room went still. Turner stared at her, his authority slipping away like sand. You're out of line. Maybe, she said, but at least I'm finally on the right side. She turned to Aisha. Don't let them shame you for speaking truth. Ever. Aisha's heart raced. For the first time, she felt seen, truly seen. By the end of the day, #StandWithAisha was trending on Twitter. TV anchors debated the school's response. Celebrities weighed in. Parents flooded the district with calls. The story had outgrown them all. That night, sitting on her porch, Aisha watched as the world outside her small town began to change. One post, one message, one truth at a time. Liam texted her, "You okay?" She typed back, scared, but maybe for the right reasons. He replied, "They can't silence you now. Everyone's watching." A soft smile crossed her face. For the first time since that word was spoken, she felt something powerful, control. The world that once ignored her pain was now listening, not because she screamed louder, but because she never broke her calm. Still, deep down, she knew the storm was only beginning. And this time, silence wouldn't save anyone. By Monday morning, Aisha could feel it in the air. The shift. The cheers had faded. The hashtags had slowed. Now came the whispers. The headlines had changed. Did she go too far? Viral student divides community. Some say it's just an overreaction. The same reporters who once praised her were now dissecting her tone, her facial expressions, her past tweets, searching for anything that could make her less sympathetic. In the school hallway, kids avoided her eyes. The same classmates who had hugged her last week now pretended to be busy tying their shoes. Even Liam looked uneasy. He tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. She overheard someone say, "She's loving the attention, isn't she?" Another whispered, "My parents said her family's suing for money." Each lie cut deeper than the one before. At lunch, she sat alone for the first time since freshman year. Her tray stayed untouched. Every bite tasted like bitterness and shame. Her phone buzzed. Another notification, another hate message. "You people always play the victim. Go back to where you came from. Bet you lied for clout." The cruelty was endless. But what hurt most was how easily it spread, faster than truth. Sharper than justice. By the time she got home, her mother was pacing in the kitchen, clutching her phone. "Aisha, the district called again," she said, her voice shaking. "They want us to come in tomorrow. They said they're being pressured by parents." Aisha looked up. Pressured to do what? Her mother hesitated. "To suspend you." The words crashed into her like thunder. Suspend me? For what? For being called a slur? Her father stepped in quietly. "They're scared, Aisha. When power gets exposed, it doesn't apologize. It strikes back." She sank into a chair, tears burning her eyes. "I didn't want any of this. I just wanted them to stop pretending it's okay." Her mother knelt beside her. "You did nothing wrong. Remember that." That night, Aisha couldn't sleep. The glow of her phone screen flickered across the room. Endless comments, arguments, hate. She scrolled numbly until one comment caught her eye. "They're trying to bury her." But seeds only grow when buried. It was from an anonymous user, no profile picture, no name. But the words hit her heart like a spark in the dark. The next morning, as she entered the school office, Principal Turner's mask of politeness had vanished completely. "Aisha," he began curtly, "due to the ongoing disruption your situation has caused, the board has decided to place you on temporary suspension pending review." Her father clenched his fists. "You're punishing her for being humiliated in your building?" Turner avoided his gaze. "We're maintaining order." Aisha's mother spoke calmly but firmly. "Order built on silence isn't justice." Turner sighed. "Ma'am, this is policy." "Policy," her father repeated, his voice trembling with anger. The same word they used in the 1960s. Turner looked uncomfortable. Let's stay civil. Aisha stood up. Her hands were shaking, but her voice wasn't. I've stayed civil long enough. The office fell silent. She looked him straight in the eye. You're not suspending me because I broke a rule. You're suspending me because I broke your comfort. Her words hung heavy in the air, too sharp to ignore, too honest to deny. They left without another word. Cameras were already outside the school gates again. But this time, Aisha didn't look away. She didn't hide her face. Later that evening, her story hit the national news once more, but from a different angle. A small local journalist named Clara Ruiz had written an op-ed titled, "The Girl Who Refused to Be Silent." Clara wasn't from a big network. She wasn't chasing ratings. Her piece was raw, heartfelt, and honest. It detailed the hypocrisy of the school board, the silence of the teacher, and the quiet bravery of a teenage girl who just wanted respect. It spread fast, not like a scandal this time, but like truth breaking through noise. That night, Aisha sat on her porch again, watching the sunset. Her father joined her, holding 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to her. You know, your grandfather marched in the South back in the day. He said something I never forgot. Courage isn't loud, it's consistent. Aisha smiled faintly. Consistent, huh? That I can do. They sat in silence, listening to the faint hum of distant traffic. The world still buzzed with noise, hate, debate, chaos. But inside she felt calm. Like she had finally chosen her side and wasn't afraid to stand there alone. In the distance, thunder rolled softly, hinting that another storm was coming. But Aisha was ready this time, because she'd learned something crucial. Sometimes you don't fight back by shouting. You fight back by enduring and by refusing to break. The gymnasium smelled like sweat and tension. Rows of folding chairs filled the space, occupied by parents, teachers, and students, all buzzing with anticipation. At the front, a long table of school board members sat under the harsh white lights. In the middle sat Aisha, small, calm, determined. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, some curious, some hostile, some quietly supportive. The sound of camera shutters echoed like raindrops. Principal Turner sat 2 seats away, stiff in his navy suit. Next to him, Miss Parker fidgeted nervously, her hands twisting a pen. The board chair, a woman named Linda Graves, adjusted her microphone. We are gathered to discuss the ongoing issue at Westbrook High involving Miss Aisha Williams and a recently circulated video. The murmurs grew louder. Graves continued. Let me be clear, this is not a trial. It's an opportunity for understanding and resolution. Aisha swallowed. Understanding, that word again. It always meant the same thing. Listen quietly while we justify injustice. A man in the crowd shouted, "She ruined those boys' lives for a joke." A ripple of gasps followed. Graves banged her gavel. Order! Aisha clenched her fists under the table but stayed silent. She had learned that silence, when chosen, was more powerful than rage. Finally, Graves looked toward her. Miss Williams, you may speak. The microphone seemed miles away. Aisha leaned forward, her voice trembling but clear. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want my face on the news. I just wanted to go to school without being called something that made me feel less than human. Her words hung in the air like slow thunder. She took a deep breath. When I spoke up, I was told I was offended. When I showed proof, I was told to stay quiet. And when the truth spread, you tried to punish me for it. But I'm not here to apologize for being hurt. I'm here because pretending everything's fine is how hate survives. The room fell completely silent for a moment. Even Turner looked down, but before anyone could respond, a man in the audience stood, tall, red-faced, angry. My son was one of those boys, he barked. He's been harassed nonstop since that video. She's destroying kids' lives for attention. A few people clapped. Others murmured their agreement. Graves looked uneasy. Sir, please. But the man continued, pointing at Aisha. What do you even want, huh? Money? Fame? You're making our school look bad. Aisha's father started to rise, but before he could, a soft, raspy voice echoed from the back of the gym. Sit down, Gerald. Everyone turned as an elderly woman stood near the last row. She was small, with silver hair pinned neatly, wearing a faded floral dress. Her cane tapped softly on the floor as she made her way forward. Graves blinked. Mrs. Holloway? A murmur spread. Margaret Holloway, the retired history teacher who taught at Westbrook for over 40 years. She reached the microphone. I've seen this school for half a century. I've seen kids grow up, make mistakes, learn better. But I've also seen what happens when adults refuse to face the truth. Her gaze shifted toward the board. Sharp as glass. Don't you dare make this child the villain because she forced you to see something ugly. Turner's jaw tightened. With all due respect, nothing, Holloway snapped. Her voice cracked, but her words were iron. I taught during segregation. I watched black students walk through these doors and get spat on. You think we're past that? Look at this room. We're still defending the ones who do wrong and punishing the ones who speak up. The entire gym went silent. No one moved. Aisha's mother's eyes glistened. Liam sat near the back, recording quietly. Mrs. Holloway turned toward Aisha, her expression softening. You have more courage than most of us ever did. Don't let them take that from you. Aisha felt her throat tighten. She wanted to thank her, but no words came. Graves cleared her throat, clearly shaken. Mrs. Holloway, we appreciate your perspective, but no, the old woman interrupted. You don't appreciate it. You just want this to go away. But it won't, because courage like hers doesn't fade, it spreads. There it was, the moment that cracked the silence. People began to clap. First softly, then louder. One row, then two. Then the whole gym erupted in applause. Aisha sat still, tears streaming down her face. Her heart pounding with something she hadn't felt in weeks, validation. Even Graves seemed momentarily lost, her script forgotten. Turner stared straight ahead, jaw tight, knowing the tide had turned. When the applause finally faded, Graves exhaled. Thank you, Mrs. Holloway. Will? Take all this under advisement. It was the weakest sentence in the room. The crowd knew it. The cameras knew it. The truth was already out. As Aisha stood to leave, Mrs. Holloway reached out. Her wrinkled hand brushing Aisha's. Don't you ever let them make you small? She whispered. Aisha smiled through her tears. I won't. And as she walked out into the evening air, the same crowd that once whispered now parted for her with quiet respect. Girl who once sat silent in a classroom had made an entire room listen, and deep down, she knew this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of her voice. The morning after the hearing, the school felt like a war zone wrapped in silence. Hallways that once echoed with laughter were now filled with whispers. Teachers avoided eye contact. Students stared down at their phones, refreshing the same clip over and over. Because overnight a video had gone viral. It was shaky, just 42 seconds long, but clear enough. It showed Principal Warren standing in front of Jamal, the black honor student he had called boy. The sound of the slur was sharp, undeniable. You could even see the moment Jamal's shoulders stiffened. His eyes filled with quiet pain. And at the very end, you could hear another voice low, trembling, almost off-camera whisper, "Don't do this." Sir. That voice belonged to Ethan. The same student who had mocked Jamal days earlier. The same boy who'd started the fight that spiraled into all this. Now, the world knew. By 9 a.m., the clip had hit 1 million views on TikTok. #Justice for Jamal trended nationwide. News vans lined the street outside the school. Inside, chaos reigned. Students rallied in the courtyard with handmade signs. Dignity is not optional. We heard the word. Warren watched from his office window, pale and sweating. He looked smaller than ever, his arrogance now replaced by panic. His phone rang nonstop. Parents. Reporters. The superintendent. He slammed it down and muttered, "This is out of control." Meanwhile, Jamal sat quietly in the counselor's office. Phone buzzing with hundreds of messages from strangers. Some kind, some cruel, all loud. His mother sat beside him, hands folded tight. "Are you okay, baby?" she asked softly. He nodded, though his eyes were red. "I didn't want this, Mom. I just wanted him to stop." "I know," she said. "But sometimes the truth has to burn before it can clean." Outside, the crowd's chants grew louder. In another wing of the building, Ethan sat alone in an empty classroom, staring at the same video he'd secretly filmed. His leg bounced nervously. His phone buzzed with messages, some calling him a hero, others a snitch. He wasn't either, he thought. He was just ashamed. He remembered the look on Jamal's face that day. The shock. The humiliation. The quiet strength that didn't break, even under a principal's insult. So when he'd filmed it, he hadn't known why. Maybe guilt. Maybe instinct. But now, he understood. He'd filmed it because someone had to. By noon, the district board called an emergency meeting. The superintendent, a calm black woman named Mrs. Caldwell, stood at the podium before the press. "We take this matter with utmost seriousness," she said firmly. "This video does not reflect the values of our district. Effective immediately, Principal Warren has been placed on administrative leave pending full investigation." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. Warren tried to interject, voice cracking. "This is out of context," but Mrs. Caldwell turned to him with steel in her eyes. "Sir, context doesn't excuse contempt." He went silent. That evening, Jamal walked home with his mother through the golden dusk. Cars slowed to honk in support. Neighbors waved. Yet he didn't smile. "Feels weird," he said quietly. "Everyone suddenly cares." His mom looked at him knowingly. "People always care once they see it, Jamal, but it takes someone brave to make them look." He thought of Ethan again, how he'd stood by, how he'd filmed. Maybe, just maybe, people could change. At the same time, in his dim office, Warren sat slumped over his desk. His phone kept vibrating with angry messages. The same walls that once made him feel powerful now pressed in on him. He clicked the video again, as if watching it would somehow change it. But every time, the same truth stared back. His voice full of disdain. Jamal's calm defiance. The crowd's frozen silence, and that whisper, Ethan's whisper, echoing like a conscience. He never had. He finally turned off his phone and looked out the window. The protest signs waved in the setting sun like flags of reckoning. For the first time, Principal Warren realized what it felt like to be on the other side of silence, outside. Jamal's mother stopped him near the old oak tree. "Remember this day," she said. "Because truth doesn't just expose, it transforms." He nodded slowly. A quiet strength returning to his posture. The storm had started, but he wasn't afraid anymore, because this time, the world was watching. That night, as Jamal lay in bed scrolling through the flood of comments, one message stood out, a message from an unknown sender. "You think you've won, kid? This isn't over." The sender's name? W. Warren. The glow from Jamal's phone lit up his face in the darkness of his bedroom. His heart thumped hard as he read the message again. "You think you've won, kid? This isn't over." W. Warren. The air in his room suddenly felt heavy. Outside, the faint sound of crickets filled the silence. But it wasn't calming tonight, it was mocking. He sat up in bed, locked the screen, and looked toward the door. His mother's soft snoring drifted in from the next room. He didn't want to wake her. She'd finally smiled today for the first time in weeks, but deep down, he knew peace never lasts long when pride's been wounded. The next morning, Jamal's phone buzzed nonstop again, but this time the messages were different. Unknown numbers. Blocked senders. Threats. "Keep your mouth shut or you'll regret it. You ruined a man's life and we know where you live." He deleted them one by one, hands trembling. He didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing him scared. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching him. When he got to school, the mood had shifted again. The crowds weren't chanting anymore, they were whispering. Some students avoided him altogether. Others, mostly the ones who used to laugh with Warren's son, gave him long, cold stares. It wasn't just gossip now. It was tension, raw, silent tension. At lunch, Ethan slid into the seat across from him, glancing around first. "You've been getting messages too, huh?" he whispered. Jamal frowned. "How do you know?" Ethan showed his own phone full of the same messages. They're calling me a traitor. Said I betrayed my people, whatever that means. Jamal's expression hardened. Means they're scared. You filmed the truth, they can't unsee it. Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Yeah, well, scared people do stupid things. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan looked up. You think it was him? The principal? Jamal hesitated. The first message was signed with his name. I don't know if it's real or someone pretending. Ethan leaned closer, voice low. He's not taking this quietly, man. My dad said he's lawyering up trying to claim the video was edited. Edited? Jamal scoffed. It's his own voice. Ethan nodded grimly. Yeah, but pride's louder than truth. That afternoon, as Jamal walked home, a black SUV crawled down the street behind him. No license plate. No music. Just slow. Too slow, he stopped walking. The car stopped too. Jamal swallowed hard and kept moving, pretending not to notice, but his pulse raced. He turned the corner, then darted into a corner store. Through the glass he watched the SUV roll by dark windows. Faceless threat. He stayed inside until it disappeared. The old store clerk, a kind woman with silver hair, noticed his pale face. You okay, sweetheart? She asked gently. He nodded, forcing a shaky smile. Yeah. Just needed a break. But as he stepped back into the sunlight, he realized something had changed. The story wasn't just online anymore. It was on the streets now. At home that evening, Jamal finally told his mother about the messages. She listened silently, her face calm but her eyes cold with fury. Block them, she said quietly. And if it happens again, we go to the police. Mom, what if it's him? Warren? What if? She cut him off. Then he's already lost, baby. Because when a man like that starts hiding behind threats, it means he knows the world has seen him. He wanted to believe that. But fear doesn't listen to logic. It crawls into your chest and stays there. Meanwhile, across town, in a dimly lit garage, Principal Warren sat hunched over his phone, eyes red and wild. He'd been fired officially that afternoon. No severance. No pension. No sympathy. The video had ruined him. Parents cursed at his name online. Former colleagues ignored his calls. He sipped from a cheap whiskey bottle, muttering to himself. That boy. He thinks he's some kind of hero now. He scrolled through the hateful comments under news posts. Every word felt like a dagger. Then his gaze landed on Jamal's photo again. Calm, composed, dignified. That look made his blood boil. Let's see how calm you stay when the world turns on you. He growled. His thumb hovered over a folder of file screenshots, old records, and something far worse. Something that could twist the narrative back in his favor if he was willing to lie even deeper. Later that night, Jamal couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about that SUV, about the message, about the darkness that doesn't go away even after the light hits the truth. He reached for his phone and saw a new notification. Private message. Unknown sender again. He hesitated, then opened it. It wasn't text this time. It was a photo, a blurry shot of his front porch, taken from across the street. His stomach dropped. The caption read, "Told you this wasn't over." Jamal ran to the window, but the street was empty. Only the sound of the wind. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed. And in that moment, he realized the fight for justice was no longer in the courtroom. It was outside his house. The house was silent, except for the whisper of wind pressing against the old wooden windows. Jamal sat in the living room, the light from his laptop flickering against his tense face. Every few minutes, he'd glance toward the front window, the blinds drawn halfway down, just enough to see the street outside. His phone lay beside him. The photo message was still open, his own porch, captured by someone unseen. He couldn't shake the feeling that there were eyes in the dark. It was close to midnight when his mother finally went to bed. "Lock the doors, Jamal," she said softly, her voice trembling just a little. "I already did," he replied. "Don't worry, Mom. It's probably just—" She stopped him with a look. "It's never just anything when people are this angry." The words stayed with him long after she disappeared down the hall. He refreshed his phone again. Another message. We warned you. Then another. You think the cops will protect you? His hands trembled slightly as he put the phone down. He tried to breathe slowly, but each sound outside, each gust of wind or shifting branch made his pulse race. Then came it. Thud. A soft, deliberate knock. Once, twice, then silence. He froze. Mom? He called out. No answer. The knock came again, harder this time. Thud. Jamal's throat tightened. He stood, moving slowly toward the door, his socks silent on the floor. The porch light glowed faintly through the glass panel above the handle, but the figure outside was just a silhouette, tall, still, waiting. His mind raced. Should he call the police? Should he yell for help? Instead, he whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. He swallowed. If this is some kind of joke, it's not funny. The figure moved one step closer to the door. And then, suddenly, a shout from the street. Jamal! Don't open it. It was Ethan's voice. Jamal darted to the window, pulling the blinds just enough to peek through. Ethan was running up the street, waving his arms. The silhouette on the porch turned its head, then bolted, vanishing into the shadows near the side of the house. Jamal yanked the door open and stepped out, his voice shaking. Who was that? Ethan ran up, panting hard. I saw him. There was a guy standing here. He had something in his hand looked like a phone or a camera. Jamal's heart hammered. He took that photo. He's been watching. They looked around, but the street was empty again. Just the sound of a distant car engine fading away. Ethan leaned against the porch railing, catching his breath. I came over, 'cause I got another message too. Sighed. You're next. Figured they meant you. Jamal shook his head slowly. They're trying to scare us. Make us back off. Ethan nodded grimly. Yeah, well, they're doing a good job. The two sat on the porch steps, breathing in the cold air. The night felt heavier than usual, like it was listening. After a long pause, Ethan said quietly, You know, my dad used to work under Warren. He always said he had friends in the city council. People who owe him favors. Jamal frowned. You think this is him? Or someone doing it for him? Ethan shrugged. Could be both. A man like that doesn't just disappear after losing power. He tries to pull strings from the dark. Jamal's eyes narrowed. Then we shine more light. He pulled out his phone and opened the video app. We're going live. Ethan's eyes widened. What? Right now? Yes. If they're watching, let them see they can't scare us into silence. Within minutes, Jamal's phone camera was on. The red dot blinked. The live stream title read, They tried to scare me, but I'm still here. The screen showed him and Ethan, standing under the porch light. Faces steady but unshaken. This is for everyone who's ever been called something they're not, Jamal said into the camera. For every kid who stayed quiet because they were scared. Tonight, I'm not scared anymore. If anything happens to me or my family, you all will know why. Hundreds of people began joining the live chat. Hearts and comments poured in. We got your back. Stay safe, brother. This man's brave. Ethan watched the viewer count climb 500, 1,000, 2,000. Then suddenly his face changed. Jamal, he whispered. Look. Jamal turned toward the street and froze. Far down the road, headlights flared to life. A car engine roared. It was that same black SUV. It began to roll slowly toward them. Ethan raised his phone, filming it live. Everyone watching this is the car. No plate, black SUV. The car stopped in the middle of the street. Engine idling. Then the passenger window rolled down. Man's voice echoed across the quiet neighborhood. Turn that camera off. Jamal. The porch light flickered once. Jamal's chest tightened. He recognized that voice. Principal Warren. The man leaned halfway out the window, his face half hidden in the dark. You think you've ruined me, boy? You just gave me a reason to fight back. The SUV sped away into the night, tires screeching, smoke curling in its wake. Jamal stood frozen, every muscle tense, the phone still recording. Thousands were watching live. And for the first time, the world saw the man behind the threat. Police sirens wailed in the distance as neighbors came out to their porches. Jamal lowered his phone, trembling. He whispered, almost to himself, "Tomorrow? This all ends." Morning broke slow and gray, rain streaking across Jamal's window. He hadn't slept. Neither had Ethan. The night's events had burned into their minds like a film that refused to end. Across town, phones buzzed with one headline: "Fired principal confronts student in threatening midnight encounter, caught on live stream." The video had gone viral overnight. Local channels replayed it. Talk shows analyzed it. Activists shared it. Even old classmates who once mocked Jamal posted support messages under his name. But while the world was waking up, Principal Warren wasn't done. He sat in his car outside the same school that morning, eyes sunken, hands shaking as he scrolled through the flood of comments. Racist trash. Fire him again. Arrest this man. His reputation was dust. His savings were frozen. His old colleagues refused to answer his calls. Everything he'd built on fear had finally turned on him, and yet, something in him refused to break. His pride was still intact, even if his life wasn't. He muttered under his breath, "You wanted a war, boy. You got one." He started the engine and drove toward the school. Meanwhile, Jamal arrived minutes later with his mother and Ethan. Police officers were already stationed outside, their blue lights flashing against the rain. The school board had called an emergency meeting. As Jamal stepped through the familiar halls, memories hit him like echoes. Laughter, taunts, the sound of crumpled paper hitting his shoulder years ago. But this time, there was no fear in his step. Only calm. Only dignity. Ethan walked beside him quietly. "You okay?" Jamal nodded. "Yeah, just feels..." Full circle. He stopped by his old locker. The faded paint still bore a faint scratch, a mark from a shove years ago. He ran his hand across it and smiled softly. "Not so funny anymore, is it?" He whispered. Inside the auditorium, cameras were set up. Reporters murmured, notebooks ready. The school board members sat in a row, tense, embarrassed, trying to appear composed. At the front stood Principal Warren, pale but still defiant. When his eyes met Jamal's, the room fell silent. Warren straightened his jacket, forcing a smirk. "Well, look who's become a celebrity." Jamal didn't respond. He just took his seat in the front row. The board chair cleared her throat. "Mr. Warren, you've been summoned today following new evidence of misconduct, harassment, and threats," he interrupted. "I did what was necessary to maintain discipline. These kids, these outsiders, they bring trouble into our schools." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. The chairwoman's voice hardened. "Enough, Mr. Warren. Your behavior, both past and recent, has violated not only school policy but federal law." A police officer stepped forward. "You're under arrest for harassment, intimidation, and making criminal threats." The moment froze. Warren's face went blank, then red. "You can't do this to me. I gave this school 20 years. The officer cuffed his hands gently but firmly. Outside, a crowd had gathered. Parents, teachers, students, all watching as the once powerful man was led down the same hallway he used to rule with arrogance. Phones were raised. Cameras flashed again. Someone in the crowd whispered, "That's justice." Jamal stood by the doors, watching quietly as Warren was escorted to the patrol car. Ethan walked up beside him. "Feels weird, huh?" Jamal nodded. "Yeah, I thought it'd feel like revenge. But it just feels... finished." Ethan smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's what victory really is." They both watched as the car disappeared around the corner. The rain had stopped. The clouds began to lift, a thin beam of sunlight slipping through. Later that afternoon, Jamal received an email from the superintendent. "We'd like to offer you a position as a community advisor for student inclusion programs." He stared at the message for a long moment. His mother leaned over his shoulder, eyes gleaming with pride. "See, baby? You turned pain into purpose." He smiled. "Guess so." A few weeks later, Jamal walked into that same school again, not as a scared kid this time, but as a guest speaker. The gym was full. Students clapped as he took the mic. He looked around at the faces, all colors, all backgrounds, all listening. Years ago, he began, I thought silence was strength. I thought if I just ignored hate, it would fade on its own. But silence isn't strength. It's surrender. And I learned that standing tall doesn't always mean fighting back. Sometimes it means forgiving forward. The audience was still. Some clapped softly. A few wiped tears. Jamal smiled, looked straight into the camera broadcasting the assembly, and said, to anyone watching who's ever been called a name, made to feel small, remember, their words don't define you. Your response does. The room erupted in applause. Final scene. As Jamal walked out into the afternoon sun, he saw Ethan waiting near the gates. They exchanged a smile, a silent nod that said more than words could. Across the street, a group of kids played basketball, laughing freely. The same school, but a new generation, maybe a better one. Jamal turned, one last glance at the building that had once held his worst memories. Now it held his victory. He whispered under his breath, guess I did become their boss after all. He slipped his hands into his pockets and walked away, calm, proud, and finally free.